Hello and welcome back into another episode of Tobacco Road and Abroad. My name's Gareth Parsons, joined by Aiden Moore. Aiden, how are you?
I've been better. I mean, this has been a weekend of great mixed emotions. We finally got the win. The Carolina Panthers finally got a win, but very rough showing for the Triangle in college football. But glad to be here as always. Let's jump into this episode.
Oh yeah, and definitely I think obviously the elephant in the room is the Panthers' first win, but as Aiden kind of alluded to, it did kind of come at the cost of like the three major college football teams in the area. I know Duke did get the win, but they didn't exactly play top tier competition. NC State getting blown out by Clemson. I don't know if UNC technically got blown out, but it was not a great showing against JMU, giving up 70 points at home. Like Aiden, just how are you? I know you said mixed emotions, but we'll start with the Panthers game. I know you didn't get a chance to watch, but like, what were your first impressions after? I guess like watching highlights, looking back at the stat lines, just
For the Panthers, well, uh, there's an air of life and confidence in the Panthers that I haven't seen in a while. Just gauging the fan base has is very excited and receptive of Andy Dalton. Andy Dalton was slinging that thing around the field. Big Dick Dalton is how I'm calling him right now. I'm not sure if we can say that. We can bleep that out if you want, but Andy Dalton was just letting it fly across the field, and I was very happy to see it. Very, it's just very unfortunate about the Bryce Young situation. I still do think he has potential in the NFL, but the Panthers are definitely going to be moving forward with Andy Dalton in the near future, and I'm excited to see what that will bring. Las Vegas is not the best team, so I don't want to jump on too much of a hype train yet, but just I'm very interested to see how the Panthers are going to respond now that there's seeming to be some momentum going their way. They're going into week 4 with Cincinnati Bengals. It should be an interesting game. But Gareth, what did you see in watching the game?
I wasn't able to watch the entire game. But I was able to watch the final 3 quarters of the game. I'd say I was impressed. It was a stark improvement. I will say it was nice not to have a quarterback who was completely gun shy. Andy Dalton was like fitting balls in between 3 and 4 DBs, which not something you technically want to see happening, but after how conservative Bryce played, it was kind of like a breath of fresh air to at least see someone attempting that. Is that something I want Dalton doing in the long term? Absolutely not. But I feel like you said it was just kind of like a breath of fresh air. I mean, like you said, you hate to see it happen to Bryce Young. I do think he does, like you said, have a place in the NFL, but I think it's what's best for both him and the Panthers right now. For one, him being able to develop, in a very low stakes scenario, be able to develop, learn the offense and practice where there's not as not as many consequences for his mistakes. You throw an interception, cool. Next rep, the other team doesn't get the ball. You can't get hit. You got a different color jersey on. Offensive line breaks down. They just tag you on the shoulder. You're good. And I also think he gets to watch how Andy Dalton handles the pressure. I think when it comes to developing a quarterback, I know we've talked about it on here before. Not all of it's just being able to like sit back and learn the offense with very little consequences. And at the end of the day, that is how you learn something. It's like when you start to learn, you learn in a very low stakes environment. Think of like college or high school. What comes before the test? A quiz. And a quiz is usually a lot lower stake, depending on the teacher, a lot lower stakes than an exam, like a game. And I feel like, well, that's important. He also, like I mentioned, gets to see how Andy Dalton handles it. How does Dalton handle when the pass blocking completely breaks down? How does Andy Dalton handle this situation? It's not only low stakes learning, but it's also seeing what a veteran does in this situation. And obviously, a veteran passes prime, but like Andy Dalton's not in an ideal scenario either. But he's getting not only behavior modeled for him, not that Bryce Young's behavior was an issue, but like how a tried and proven NFL quarterback handles certain situations, if you know what I mean.
Of course.
But I mean, obviously, I know the Raiders aren't the best team in the world, but the Raiders do have some significant wins this season. They have beaten the Ravens, and I know the Ravens have not had the best showing this season. But I do think when it comes to at least the Ravens, they are a lot better than their record would suggest. I know they got that tough loss to the Chiefs on that toe tap catch from Isaiah Likely, I believe. But I think they're one of the few 1-2 teams that I feel like can. And I know 1-2. I mean, yeah, of course they can turn their season around, but they starting out 0-2 is kind of a death sentence for an NFL team, at least in recent years. However, I do think the Ravens will be able to kind of turn it around and get it done this season. I really don't know where I stand on the Raiders. I know they're not a great program or a great NFL program, but I will say if they are able, since they were able to, beat the Ravens, who have a lethal rushing attack. They've got Lamar, who's both lethal with his arms and his legs. They've got really good receivers. I know Mark Andrews has been kind of non-existent in this season, but that's because people have finally realized how good Mark Andrews can be. For those who don't know, Mark Andrews is the Ravens tight end. It's similar to the Kelsey situation where, like, it's now like even like your little 5-year-old brother knows Mark Andrews is a dangerous, essentially receiver or tight end, and you have to essentially like go to extreme lengths to not let him get the ball, and that's what we've seen this season with his. I guess he hasn't been targeted much, and he's not getting many reps, but I think that's because of like the respect thing. And the Raiders were able to stop him and kind of limit his. They're able to kind of limit the Ravens as a whole. So I wouldn't go as far as to say they're one of the worst teams in the NFL, like people are saying, but I do think the Panthers shouldn't put too much weight on this win, but not take it lightly enough that it takes away from the momentum of this. That this, like you said, use this momentum to like kind of jump forward, but don't put the end all. Don't make this game the end all be all. If you get what I'm saying, like this game is a big deal, but we've got to move past it. If you get what I'm saying.
Absolutely. We don't want to hang on to the past, and we got to be looking forward to the future. The Panthers are playing the Cincinnati Bengals at home this weekend. The Cincinnati Bengals are probably one of the best 0-3 teams that I've seen, but unable to get the win against the Washington Commanders is something that I found to be pretty interesting. It was a shootout, but in the end, the Commanders were able to edge out and get the win. And the Bengals are going to really bring their A game against the Panthers this weekend, trying to get their first win. So this is a game that Carolina needs to really take their first win, put in the rearview mirror, and really start looking forward to the future and trying to learn from all the mistakes in the first 2 weeks, learn from the benefits of week 3, and try to put it all together and hopefully come out strong against Cincinnati. I'm not going to be jumping on the hype train too much just yet and saying it's a guaranteed win for the Panthers, because it's definitely going to be a dogfight. But a lot of things to definitely be looking forward to coming into this week.
Yeah, and I agree that, like you said, the Bengals are probably the best 0-3 team there's ever been. But I will say, historically, over the last few seasons, even the Super Bowl the Bengals have gone to most recently, September's always a slow month for them. They always struggle. I think they have started 0-3 before in September and still made the playoffs. Now, granted, that's obviously not a position you want to start in. But I feel like a lot of people have been talking about, at least I've seen in the media, talking about how there are quarterbacks in similar situations to Joe Burrow where like their team is not as bad as their record would suggest. And they're like saying, is it time we like say Joe Burrow is like overrated or something like that? Honestly, I just think those people are just trying to stir up media craze. you look at it statistically, especially in September, Burrow isn't the issue. Yes, he had that critical fumble in the game against the Chiefs, but that was his only turnover. Like, the quarterback's going to turn the ball over sometimes, and sometimes the defense is going to take it for 6. Like, yes, is that on him personally? But you can't expect your quarterback to be perfect. And I know this Bengals team is not the Bengals team of past years. I know they're not as strong, but they still have a really strong roster. They looked good in the Chiefs game. I mean, Burrow through 3 games. Burrow has 746 yards, 5 touchdowns. He's not looking bad. Now, I mean, obviously, would you like that fumble back? Of course. But that's in the past, like Aiden and I've talked about. That's in the past. Like, you got to get over that. Now, and I know in their loss to New England, he didn't have a touchdown pass, but that New England game to start the season kind of took everyone by surprise. Like, New England was thought to be one of the worst teams in the NFL, and they may still be. But New England kind of came out, controlled the clock with their run game, really kind of dominated that Cincinnati defensive line. From there on out, the Bengals played pretty well in their 2 losses to the Commanders and the Chiefs. Now, I'm not going to sit here and stand on a soapbox and tell you how the Commanders are some, like, dangerous team we need to keep an eye out for. I mean, yeah, they have explosive offensive potential, but the Commanders still have, I wouldn't say a weak roster, but would you say they have more of kind of like they have a younger roster who's less experienced, who, while they have the explosive upside potential, they kind of have, with how young they are, they kind of have the ability to, like, fall apart and kind of let their emotions get the best of them.
I don't know. I'm very high on Daniels right now. I think he's definitely, after this week's performance, definitely going to be in the conversation for Offensive Rookie of the Year. And he is playing, he played lights out football, had a very, it was a weird game against the Giants. Didn't they? I think they won despite him not throwing a touchdown. In actuality, they only won on field goals in that game, but he was able to put his team in a prime position to win against the Giants, and had a strong showing in the Bengals. The Cardinals, the Commanders are going to be playing the Cardinals this week, and I think that could be another solid showing for Daniels. I'm not the highest on the Commanders, but I definitely do think that they're a very strong football team that is a team that we should definitely look out for, especially considering the fact that this year I don't think the NFC East is going to be as strong as we think it is. The Eagles, I feel like, are not fraudulent, but they're showing some really serious flaws that need to be addressed. And the Cowboys have been cowboying it up and proving that they are not overrated. They're just facing a crisis as a team. That Ravens game was definitely a tough showing, and the Saints blowout that they had a couple weeks ago, where they lost 44-19, is definitely not a tough showing, not a great showing. Tonight they did win against the Giants, 20-15. It was a good show, good enough win, but the Giants also aren't a very strong team this year that I'm not high on whatsoever. So I feel like the NFC East is a lot more up for grabs than we might think. And I think if the Commanders play their cards right, I think they definitely might have a playoff spot this year.
Definitely. I was just looking at the Commanders' schedule, and after how we've seen them play. I'm not saying they were bad in terms of what I said. I was just saying, like, with their inexperience, they do have, I guess, some flaws that could be exploited in the future. That doesn't mean they are, but I will say, like I said earlier, they do have very explosive potential. as we saw, they kept pace with the Bengals, who at times are kind of an offensive juggernaut with, T. Higgins, Jamar Chase, Joe Burrow. Yeah, Jamar Chase, sorry. I get confused over which Joe Burrow LSU receivers at the Vikings and which is at the Bengals. I always forget. Oh, yeah, Justin Jefferson's at the Vikings. I always get confused. That entire team was full of just deadly receivers, and it's with how good they are, they sometimes blur together in my mind, though I realize they kind of have different styles, but they just with how explosive they are, I'm just so used to seeing them on highlight reels that it's just they kind of blend together at times.
I get it. But looking at the Commanders' schedule, I definitely do see them having some easier wins. They do have the Browns in the next couple weeks. That could be a solid win for them. They are going to be playing the Panthers October 20th. If that game might be a little bit more interesting than we might think. As we've seen, the Panthers are showing some life, but I'm still not too high on them. But the season's still pretty young. A lot of unknowns. My only prayer is that Daniels does not become the next RG3. Please do not ruin another quarterback, a Heisman quarterback's promising future due to injury. That's the only thing I'm hoping for, because I like seeing Daniels play football, and just seeing him light it up against the Bengals was definitely his coming out party, and I was here for it.
I certainly am here for it as well. I mean, I always like seeing quarterbacks succeed in the NFL. I always hate when they talk about, not just in terms of Bryce Young, but I always hate when they talk about busts, because I feel like a lot of the people that we considered busts in the NFL they were a victim of the situation they inherited.
Look at Sam Darnold. Sam Darnold's doing good. He was considered a bust. I feel like we're entering a new age right now, the age of second chances, where quarterbacks where we once thought were busts are starting to show out a little bit more. I was really happy that Geno Smith was able to find a good home in the Seahawks. Sam Darnold seems to be doing good at the Vikings. Baker Mayfield did have a rough week against the Broncos this week as the quarterback for the Buccaneers, but I still am optimistic for Baker Mayfield's future as the quarterback for the Buccaneers. This is the era of second chances, and I am here for it. And I think notions of somebody being a bust it should be met with skepticism now, because systems, sometimes it's really not the quarterback, it's the system. As for Bryce Young, I guess that's our main topic right now, because we are a Carolina podcast and we like talking about the Panthers. I really do hope to see Bryce Young play for a successful team in the future. I have no ill will towards him, and I hope he is either able to make a comeback in a couple years as the Panthers QB, or maybe he might have another revival somewhere else. Anywhere, I'd be here to see. I would love to see it.
I would too. And I feel like one thing I'd like to talk about, at least, is with this whole bus thing, is I feel like this whole new age of like how obsessed with stats we are. And I'm not gonna lie, stats are helpful, and like these next gen stats are great. Like we would not have found Patrick Mahomes without next gen stats. Playing for 6-6 Texas Tech, we would not have found Patrick Mahomes without those next gen stats. But I will say, I forget where I saw this, whether this was on someone breaking down quarterbacks on YouTube or if it was on some sort of Instagram Reels, but they were talking about how the great quarterbacks of the past would not, with how stats obsessed we are as football fans and just kind of a football society, those quarterbacks would have been labeled busts before they even got off the ground. If you saw
Peyton
the
Manning, year one, infamously had like the most interceptions of a rookie in the first season, and he turned out to be one of the greatest quarterbacks of all time. But yeah, I definitely see what you're talking about.
Yeah, like you were talking about Peyton Manning's first season, 1998, 26 touchdowns, 28 interceptions. Brett Favre's first 2 years. Brett Favre's first full year in the NFL, 18 touchdowns, 13 picks. Second year, 19 touchdowns, 24 picks. Brett Favre. Dude would not have lasted a second with how stats obsessed we are.
Absolutely.
I mean, Phillip Rivers, one of his first 4 years, 21 touchdowns, 15 interceptions. That's not great either. Like, the list goes on and on. And I realize there's also a different expectation of quarterbacks now. Like, back then, the gunslinger was all the rage in the NFL. Like, yeah, it was a run-heavy league, but, like, boy, if you could throw the deep ball, you were set. But now, like we've seen with the Shanahan offense, not knocking it, the Shanahan offense is a thing of beauty. It is fun to watch. But the Shanahan offense takes all the decisions out of the quarterback's hands. There are rumors going around that have come out of the 49ers camp that Brock Purdy's not even allowed to audible. But that's neither here nor there. But what I'm saying is, back then it was okay for quarterbacks to make a mistake. Now, and like, I guess, and I love that offenses are trying to get more efficient. They're trying to figure out the fastest way to move the ball down the field, or what plays give them the best chance of getting the most yards out of it. And you can't fault them for that. But at the same time, I think our obsession with like next gen stats, which I am a big fan of, can be kind of, it's causing us to miss out on some great quarterbacks, I feel like.
Absolutely.
Now, with that, I think that's all we have for the NFL. I know you have some last things to add that maybe not NFL related, but is related to sports in terms of stuff that's unfolding lately. If you want to take it away for us, Aiden, I think you know what I'm talking about.
We are entering a new renaissance upon which we can truly understand how to analyze the GOATs of sports. And you might be questioning, like, what do I mean by this? Recently, it came to P. Diddy has just been arrested and is going to be going under trial for sex trafficking and various crimes that he committed. But upon further investigation that I've done, it has come to light that a lot of our NBA GOATs, the people that we assume to be some of the best in the league, participated in Diddy parties and potentially, quote unquote, freak offs, where there was a video I saw that's been resurfacing over and over again, where LeBron James says on an Instagram Live with P. Diddy, quote, "Ain't no party like a Diddy party." And I was reading the comments, and one question remained: how does this affect LeBron's legacy? And I started to do a little bit of research and a little bit of a deep dive. And I still don't have all the stats and the analytics yet, but it is apparent that a lot of NBA GOATs are relying upon Diddy parties per year to increase their stats. And nowhere can we see the stat padding with LeBron James. LeBron James came into the league around 2003, well into P. Diddy creating the Diddy parties and having this infamous party lifestyle. Pictures of LeBron James at these parties through various years have surfaced. And I was starting to wonder if this is true for LeBron James. What about other GOATs? We've seen this. I've seen also pictures of Kobe Bryant at Diddy parties. And even Michael Jordan has been seen into some of these Diddy parties. So, how can we truly analyze who is the GOAT when we have to live with the thought in our mind that our GOATs have gone to these outrageous parties? I have a solution for this, and it will only go to guarantee that Michael Jordan is the GOAT. UNC is the greatest school of all time. See, Michael Jordan started his rookie career around in the 80s and was very proficient going into the early 90s. This is well before P. Diddy came to prominence with his Diddy parties. So Michael Jordan didn't need Diddy parties to be effective in basketball, where we can't make the same assertion with LeBron James. LeBron James has been reliant on Diddy parties. This is going to be the first season where LeBron James is not going to have Diddy parties, and I'm very interested in seeing how he's going to be able to respond to this adversity. Also considering the fact that his own son is now not going to be able to partake in these. Is this an outrageous statement? Absolutely. But I think the DPPY, the Diddy parties per year, is an underrated stat that we need to take into consideration because we can't be claiming people to be goats if they are reliant on the DPPY. Because I can't sit here and say somebody's the goat if they, throughout their career, were reliant on Diddy parties. So these were my findings. Michael Jordan, I will concede, has gone to Diddy parties, and that's very unfortunate for his GOAT status. But he has at least examples of him not being reliant on these Diddy parties. So therefore, for the meantime, we can only call him the GOAT because we know he is not reliant on these Diddy parties.
Question, Aiden.
Yes.
So are you likening this to? Are you essentially trying to determine if, say, LeBron's performances will tank this season? Kind of similar how we saw with Ben Roethlisberger when, according to Twitter, certain sites crack down upon certain types of entertainment on certain sites, shall I say?
Yes, I am saying these are stats that we don't take into consideration when analyzing our GOATs. You bring up Ben Roethlisberger. I bring up Deshaun Watson. Deshaun Watson has been horrible ever since he hasn't been able to exploit masseuses, and thankfully he's been doing horrible now. So I think this is a great thing that we are starting to crack down on athletes being taking advantage of people who are not in a position to defend themselves. Because if they do take advantage of these people, they perform well. And if they don't, they suffer. And I feel like they deserve to suffer if they're reliant on the exploitation of innocent people.
I agree. So what you're saying it's kind of like they have it coming, is what you're saying. It's
Absolutely.
so what we're saying is us here at Tobacco Road are preying on LeBron's downfall this season.
I hope to. I deep down, if everything comes out and it turns out that he was just at the parties and knew nothing about it, I do not want to prey on his downfall. But if he was complacent in allowing these things to perpetuate and his stats suffer, I think it's something that is well warranted.
Oh no, I definitely agree, and it's. I will say, in terms of at least their stats suffering, I don't think that's enough. But I feel like that's kind of life's way at getting back at them by them suffering. We're not trying to make light of this at all. We're just saying it's nice to see after things like this come out, athletes finally, getting theirs. And we're not. I wouldn't say like we're preying on athletes' downfalls. We're just saying, like Aiden was saying, people who benefit from stuff like this and like take advantage of those who aren't in a position of power, like do stuff like that. It's nice to see that even though, like, I guess in the Deshaun Watson case where it's like it feels like justice really isn't being served. And his stats suffering does not make up for anything that has happened, but it is nice to see that there's some sort of like balance in life, that some aspect of
Karma
his
is
life.
karma is real, and I've heard some people, I believe a Barstool Sports podcast said that Deshaun Watson is so bad at football now, he is almost as bad as a football player as he is a person. So it's starting to all even out now. So we're going to see how revealing these things really affect the play of people who have been benefiting from these things.
Yeah, I agree. And I do think for at least Watson, if something comes out about LeBron, there needs to be further punishment than just, horrifying stats one year.
Yeah, but everyone's rich, so they're cheating at life. So it's probably this is probably the only form of justice that we can really take like solace in. But I'll take what I can get. Our justice system is kind of corrupt, and these things will probably continue to happen. It's very unfortunate.
It is unfortunate. So you're saying this is like a way of like, not for the victims, but at least for the common man to like, they're not getting theirs completely, but like for the common, I guess, enjoyer of the sport, be like, you know what, this is deserved. I don't feel bad for you for having a down season. You deserve every much of this and more.
Indeed.
Okay, all right, good. We just want to clarify for the viewers out there that we were not trying to make light of the situation. We were just trying to say this
I'm
is a
just
trend
trying.
we've
I'm
noticed.
just all I'm trying to do is bring light to the fact that a lot of the people we idolize are horrible people, and we need to really take this into consideration
Oh no, definitely,
when analyzing who the true GOAT is. And
absolutely.
I'm still I'm a little bit more reluctant now to say that Michael Jordan is the GOAT, as he also participated in Diddy parties. But I look forward to the day where a UNC graduate or a UNC basketball player is able to become the GOAT and also be a good person. I believe it can happen.
And with that, I think Aiden and I are going to segue into our college football portion of the show, hopefully on a brighter note. But Aiden, over the weekend, we had some pretty decent matchups. We had some surprising results. You and I were wrong about quite a few things, but such is the life of sports media. Predictions aren't always going to be right. I mean, we aren't able to sense the future, so we are going to be wrong. Some games we were spot on, others we weren't, but like I said, that is life. Any
I
just
think I
kind of
was
initial.
batting at like 0 for 3. Like I don't think I got a single game right. I could probably go back and check the tape on me, but I'm not gonna lie, it was a down week for me, and as it comes to predictions, UNC got absolutely walked by JMU, and I'm gonna eat my words when I say this isn't the JMU team that of last year. I was right in one part, like this definitely isn't the past JMU team, but I think this might be a better JMU team. JMU had a very strong performance against UNC, and scoring 70 points is an insane feat of it itself, especially against a Power Four school. So hats off to JMU for that. And UNC, it was not a very strong showing. 50 points were scored, and usually most of the time that's going to help you get the ball game. But if you're allowing 70 points to be scored, even off of like some fundamental things like punts and you're trying to avoid turnovers, UNC just had a bad performance, and I can't cut it out any other way other than that.
Same with me. The NC State game was very rough. While I do say for both State and Carolina, I feel like these were winnable games. But the frustrating thing, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but I will say the frustrating thing about the NC State losses that I've seen this season, it could be the same way for Carolina's first loss. It wasn't just that the other team was better than us. The mistakes that NC State made were completely fixable, and like really simple things. And if I'm going to be honest, the difference between good teams, great teams, and even okay teams is how well do you do the small things? Like, oh, you think just missing one block will hurt you? That missed block can turn into a strip sack. That missed block can turn into a scoop and score. You get what I'm saying? Like, yes, they got blown out, but I feel like these are fixable mistakes. I mean, twice NC State ran on third down when their quarterback was perfect on the day passing at this point in the game. He hadn't thrown a game completion yet. His average depth per attempt and depth per target was further than the first down line. I'm still, and yes, I did say on the podcast, I did say we needed to utilize Cedric Bailey's ability to run and make the defense defend 11v11 versus 11v10. But that doesn't mean running quarterback draw on 3rd and 10. Yes, that's great if you a couple third downs into the game, when you've determined that on third and long the defense is rushing 3 or rushing 4 and dropping 7 or 8. Not when they're having people kind of hang out, or not necessarily rush, but kind of hang out around the line of scrimmage. That's not what you want to do. But I don't know if that's how you felt about the Carolina game. How I know you said you didn't get a chance to watch it, but if you feel like it was, would you say the mistakes that UNC made were completely fixable and like?
Yeah, I feel like a lot of the mistakes that were made were very avoidable upon looking back at blown special teams plays, turnovers that were just mistakes that very much could have been avoided. I feel like there's a lot to be addressed going into Duke. This is going to be a rivalry game. Give their best showing, considering that Duke is not JMU, and they're going to be giving it 100% since they're going into this game 4-0, and they've proved to be a very resilient team. And aren't the most pretty, but they find ways to win. And UNC really needs to harbor this energy, this type of find a way to win energy against Duke. There's a lot of things going in the locker room I've heard at UNC that is definitely not the most optimal for a winning environment. One story that I have heard was that in the locker room following the JMU game, Mac Brown told his players that he was pretty much quitting. And a lot of people assessed this and said this was an overreaction for Mac Brown. But I'm going to go out and say this is probably one of the most UNC things he could have done. If you have ever met a UNC student before, you will know that a lot of UNC students, when met with a little bit of adversity in school, start saying stuff like, oh, I'm going to drop out. Oh, UNC is hard. Da, 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 da. I'm not even saying that I'm a avoidant of this, but after like a couple hours, you sit down and you realize, hey, I was tripping a little bit. So some people say that Mac Brown was in this. I feel like he was just embodying the true spirit of UNC right now. But this is definitely something that is something that needs to be addressed. Everybody needs to buy into the team, and I'm interested to see how this week is going to turn out after such a devastating loss. Not even a loss that you can chalk it up as, oh, it was just a bad game or just a bad roll. This was a devastating loss for UNC.
I agree, but I do feel like this Duke game could be kind of a get right game for y'all. Duke's been kind of unproven this season. Yes, they have that ugly win at Northwestern, partially due to the weather, But in a rivalry game, I feel like all bets are off. It doesn't really matter the record of either team in a rivalry game. Both teams get up for it. Emotions are running high, and it's about who can manage those emotions and play their game at the same time. And I feel like if UNC can win this game against Duke, I feel like that'll get them back on the right track. And just kind of that'll give them the momentum to kind of finish out the season. Now, would that put them on any sort of college football playoff track? In my mind, not necessarily. But I will say for further on down the line for UNC, that could like destiny's in their hands at this point. Like they don't have an ACC loss yet. So that's a benefit. That's a one big benefit. But I feel like to start off ACC play, a win over Duke would really kind of not right the ship completely, but, kind of steer the program in the right direction, especially coming off of Mac Brown's comments. I will address that. I will say he has made a comment that I kind of agree with, that the locker room used to be a sacred place. Now, you look at, as people in sports media and sports media stuff I've attended, there really is no sacred space for the team. Like, nothing is said in confidence. Obviously, if you're talking to a bunch of, 20-year-old guys, nothing's being said in confidence, if we're being honest. But, the press is everywhere now. And, I'm sure there are other coaches who say something like this, and it flies under the radar because the press isn't there. Now, I'm not sure in the light that he said this in. I know Aiden and I have talked about this a bit, but this could have been something out of frustration where it's like, I've had coaches in the past say stuff like, if you're going to perform, not to me personally, but to teams I've been on, if you're going to perform like this personally, then why the hell am I coaching? I don't know if that was that type of situation, but I could see a lot of times in sports writing and press, because we don't have a video of what Mac Brown said, because it's in writing, you can't really determine the inflection and the emphasis he placed on it. So I will say, in this sense, that gives sports writers a lot of power, because if they're not showing a video along with their content, they're able to spin things in certain ways where they can get the most clicks, or spend certain things in ways that make people look poor or negative, look poorly, spin it in a light that gives them clicks. So it's like Aiden and I always acknowledge on this show, being in the sports media industry, we are very privileged in being able to look at this from an outside view and kind of interject our opinions kind of uninterrupted, if you will. But I will say that isn't a good look. But I will say Duke can be kind of a get-right game for North Carolina. And I feel like if they win, that will set them on momentum to do good things this season. All right, and I do think NC State's in a similar boat. A lot of those mistakes were fixable. Don't know what just fell, but we'll roll. A lot of the mistakes were fixable, like I said, running on 3rd and 8, not exactly the best decision. The defense didn't look great, but I feel like that's a poison we're kind of going to have to stay with. I see a lot of people on Twitter about NC State talking about the 3-3-5 defense, and I addressed this in my NC State emergency press conference video, which I think Aiden's making one of those about Carolina, just a short snippet about Carolina as well up to this point. And like I said, I'll address it more in depth in my NC State emergency press conference, but a lot of people on Twitter are saying we need to switch away from that 3-3-5 just because it looks so exploitable. No, I think just this season, with how much experience left our defense, being able to run the 3-3-5 effectively to stop the run and the pass, you have to have really good athletes in your secondary and in kind of the linebackers, which we don't necessarily have anymore. I know the Clemson game was rough, but I will say, yes, we did have a lot of our starting DBs back, but these were starting DBs coming off of injuries. For instance, our safety, Boykin, he hasn't played in a game in 9.5 months. That was his first game against Clemson. And I'm not making excuses, but I'm saying he did not look like himself. But if I ask anyone in a sport, yeah, he'd been practicing, but if I ask anyone in a sport to sit out for 9.5 months and then jump into a game or a competition against top of the line competition, they're not going to look great. Same thing with our other DBs that were outside of Boykin. They're not going to look great. That's not an excuse, because the entire defense needs to play better. But as I've mentioned on this show before, with our offensive play calling, we're doing them no favors by leaving them out to dry. Now, this weekend against Northern Illinois, I think the key here is we just got to play fundamentally sound football. Nothing special, nothing flashy. At this point in the season, I'm living by age-old NC State adage, survive in advance. Just like Aiden said, win the day. Like, win the day. Same thing, a little bit off point, but it's just something my dad always says to me is, so for those of you who don't know, I went to Providence, and whenever Providence has kind of like a substandard win, my dad always responds with this line, and I think this will apply to the rest of this NC State season, regardless of how much. I don't care how we win. I just want us to win. And as Al Davis said, just win, baby, win. I don't care what it looks like, just fucking win. And I feel like that could be a mantra for UNC from here on out too. Just win, baby. Just win.
Yeah, that's the mantra. I do want to highlight that this NIU game for NC State looks to be very interesting. NIU is Dave Doran's former school that he used to coach at before he came to state, I believe 10 years ago, over 10 years ago.
12.
It's been a while.
Yes,
12. Wow. But NIU displayed a very good game against Notre Dame, had a weaker showing against Buffalo last week. So it's definitely going to be an interesting game that could, like, it's going to be more, could go either way. I really don't know which way it could go, but honestly, just the way that State has been playing, would not be surprised if NIU came away with the win on this one, Gareth. I'm sorry, I might be calling it, but I think NIU might have State's number. But then again, once again, you might be wanting me to pick NIU because my picks lately have not been hit.
Neither have mine. You mentioned earlier off air that you went 0 for 3 last weekend. I think I as well went 0 for 3 last weekend. And I was just like completely wrong. I had Georgia Tech beating Louisville. I had Syracuse giving a wake-up call to Stanford. That was honestly wrong. We both had Michigan losing big at home, but unfortunately that is not what happened. I'm not preying on Michigan's downfall, but that was just kind of my prediction. Stanford, I will say, you looked great in that game. I mean, you didn't look perfect, but you made a Syracuse offense that people have talked about being one of the best offenses in the ACC. It looked great, but you made them make mistakes, which that's how you're going to beat Syracuse with. I know Kyle McCord's kind of Mr. Inconsistent. I mean, he has great stat lines, but some of his decision-making isn't the best. I guess some other results over the weekend that I guess you could say were kind of shocking would be Buffalo getting the win over NIU, like Aiden mentioned. But I'm going to chalk that up to just Maction. I'm chalking that up to just Maction. NIU losing. That's just Maction.
Maction, baby. Love it.
And I guess one last surprising thing, I guess, Texas A&M barely beating Bowling Green and then BYU blowing out Kansas State. Kansas State, after watching their true freshman. I agree. It was interesting. After watching their true freshman in the bowl game against NC State last year, dude literally looked like he could be not a Heisman contender, but looked like he could be something special. He kind of looked ineffective in this game, if I do say so myself. Like, and I'm not knocking him. Like, dude's a sophomore. He's got a lot of his college career ahead of him. Like, brush the game off, but I don't know what BYU did that night to do that, but BYU kind of shut them down. You have any kind of reactions from this past weekend, Aiden, outside of our State and Carolina analysis?
Looking back at week 4, one game that let's talk about some of the major top 25 games. Tennessee, the win against Oklahoma. I believe actually I did pick Tennessee to win this one.
You did.
Yeah. So I'm not a broken clock's right twice a day. So uh, I Tennessee had a pretty strong. Missouri able to edge out a win against Vanderbilt, proving that Missouri still has a lot of questions to be answered. Not a completely convincing win against Vanderbilt. Vanderbilt has shown to be than what we're used to seeing out of Nashville, but 30 to 27 is definitely not the type of win you want to see if you're Missouri. You want to be up major, especially don't want to into double overtime. Uh, Another game that I want to highlight, Michigan USC. I think you had some notes on this too. Michigan able to come away with the win against USC. It was a uh, not too much to say. Michigan proving that they have a little bit more fight in them than I originally thought. I thought after the Texas game and some recent weaker showings, I thought Michigan was going against USC, but they proved me wrong. Michigan able to get the win and hold off a USC team that was looking hot, in my opinion. Uh, yeah, Kansas State beat pulling off a very convincing win and a very convincing upset over Kansas State. And the Texas A&M Bowling Green game definitely still have more questions about Texas, especially considering the fact that their loss has come to a Notre Dame team that people are still trying to figure out what their level is. The Notre Dame game is not looking uh, like as good of a loss as we originally thought, and going into SEC play, I'm not sure if Texas A&M is going to be able to hold up, but it's going to be an interesting next couple weeks for sure. Going in.
It certainly is. One thing I'd like to mention about the Michigan game is Michigan was able to get it done with only 32 yards passing. That's some Bryce Young Panthers numbers. But I just wanted to throw some stats out there for you. Two
That's
teams
some Iowa numbers.
that are not traditionally known for passing the ball had almost double the yards. Two of them even triple the yards that Michigan had. Army and Navy, known for throwing the ball as many times as you can count on one hand. Army had 3 times the passing yards as Michigan with 107 to Michigan's like 32. Navy, on the other hand, Navy, who does not throw the ball a lot, they still run the ball. Like their quarterback had 211 rushing yards. Navy's quarterback had 200 yards in the air in a triple option offense. Michigan mustered 32 yards on more attempts and more completions than both teams combined. And the two quarterbacks combined for almost 400 yards with less completions. Now, I'm not knocking Michigan. My only question for them is, will they be? Yes, they beat a really good USC team who knocked off LSU, kind of came back in that game and took control late. Will Michigan be able to continue their success while having this few passing yards? Yes, Michigan's run game last year was absolutely absurd, but I don't remember this being this one-dimensional last season. My question is, are they going to be able to keep this up? Like you mentioned with the Kansas State game, I think they just kind of have a young roster. That's kind of a wake up call for this season to kind of temper their expectations. I do think they could definitely still win the Big 12, but in my opinion, the Big 12 is still Iowa is still Utah's conference to lose at this point. Other things I'm thinking about, I'm blanking on some stuff from last week. There's not necessarily anything else I want to touch on from last week. Let me do one more once over with my notes. Florida State obviously got their first win, escaped Cal. Not a great showing by them, but a win's a win. Like, yeah, they only scored 14 points. Cal only scored 9. And I guess one thing we'll touch on is Boston College getting the win in the Four Wells bandana game. I personally almost went to that game. Just I had nothing to do, and it looked like it would have been fun. Unfortunately, couldn't make my way down from Manchester, Massachusetts, down to Chestnut Hill in Newton. But nonetheless, it was a fun game to watch on TV. Boston College, even after loss to Missouri, they're just one of those teams that figures out a way to get it done. And they're the team that I'm excited to watch looking forward. Speaking of looking forward, Aiden and I are going to highlight some games we're looking forward to this weekend. Possible results, possible upsets, the whole 9 yards. Aiden, I know you highlighted the Duke game this weekend. That's always a big one. One of the 4 possible Tobacco Road matchups. Are there any specific games this week you're looking out for, or you think you have a hot take about, or just kind of any kind of general prediction of what could happen this weekend?
Well, I am excited for the battle for the victory bell, UNC versus Duke, as stated. UNC is going to have to prove a lot for me to be high on them again. And this is going to be a prime game to prove some of the doubters wrong and really bounce back. I am really interested on seeing how that game's another game I want to highlight is not an interesting game, but I think it's going to be an important game. Army just beat Temple and in a convincing manner, and I'm going to be highlighting Navy versus today. I'm high on Army. I'm not as high on Navy. I don't think they can this turnaround that they've been having is going to be as sustainable. But I would love to see them keep on keep on winning. I think they have a prime game against UAB to be show a convincing showing, and keep the momentum moving forward. I think for the rest of the year, further notice, I think we should be highlighting Army and Navy. They have not easy schedules, but they both have a very interesting path to a potential college football playoff berth. And I just always love highlighting the service academies. And I think just following them along this year is something that I'm going to be doing personally. And I'm very excited to see how they go. Louisville at Notre Dame is going to be an interesting game. Unfortunately, it's only going to be on Peacock and not NBC. So that's a little bit questionable. A top 25 matchup of number 16 Notre Dame and number 15 Louisville only being on Peacock. A little bit of some thoughts behind that, but I think Notre Dame is going to need to have a convincing showing against Louisville. I'm not high on Notre Dame right now. They had a okay win against the Miami of Ohio, and I want to see the Notre Dame that beat Purdue. I don't want to see the Notre Dame against MAC teams at home. I think right now they're rocking at a home field disadvantage right now. They've been so unconvincing, and a good win against a good Louisville team at home is something that I think Notre Dame definitely needs if they still want their playoff hopes to be alive. Still going through the list of games that pique my interest. Um, I'm going to throw Stanford and Clemson in the mix. Stanford had a very surprising win, in my opinion, against Syracuse last week and kept on rolling. This is going to be, I think this is going to be Stanford's true welcome to the ACC game. Syracuse was a good win, but we don't traditionally see Syracuse as a traditional ACC power. I think this year, but they're not that ACC blue blood. And we're going to be seeing how Stanford reacts to In Death Valley. It's a primetime game, 7 o'clock ESPN. I'm excited for this game. I think it's going to have a good showing. It's going to be very telling of season Stanford's going to be having, because Clemson has convinced me that they're a very strong team after their showing against Georgia. And speaking of Georgia, Alabama, number 2 versus number 4 college game days there. It's an ABC primetime 7:30 game. Bryant-Denny Stadium and Nick Saban Field are going to be absolutely popping this game, and I am excited and all for it. This is going to be a very telling game to see if Alabama really has what it takes to these top 5 matchups without Nick Saban. And I'm not entirely convinced that they're going to be able to pull this one off. Georgia has proven to be a relentless team time and time again. At UGA -1, this is going to be a nail-biting game, and I am excited to see how it turns out. I'm leaning towards Georgia, but I want Alabama to try to prove me wrong on this one. It's not very often that Alabama is an underdog at a home game. That just goes how monumental this game is to deciding what the culture of Alabama is post Nick Saban. Because Alabama has had some convincing wins. Wisconsin, yeah, that was a good win on the road away. But this is an SEC game a lot during the regular season, and I'm very excited for it. Penn State, Illinois is another primetime game. I believe this might be the whiteout game, if I'm not mistaken. 7:30 is going to be rocking. If you had told me that this would be the whiteout game, I would have been very disappointed. But Illinois has proven to be a very strong team, and I'm interested to see this environment surrounding the game. I think Penn State's going to run, but Illinois has proven to be a very good team so far, so might be closer than what the experts think. And just going through the list, I think those are the major top 20 games that I want to highlight right now. But one more game that I think might be interesting to watch, still a top 25 game. It's going to be Oklahoma State versus Kansas State. Kansas State really bounced back at home against an embarrassing loss against BYU. And I think it's going to be a pretty good game. Bowman from Oklahoma State has been pretty good, over 1,000 yards so far and 10 touchdowns. I think he is due for a pretty good game against Kansas State. And while Kansas State is kind of on the ground, reeling from this BYU loss, I think Oklahoma State might have to pull off the upset.
I agree. I feel like Kansas State, they're going to be kind of down after a week of off, like inability to produce on offense. I feel like now's the time. I do think there's a chance they could be reinvigorated and really take it to Oklahoma State. But after kind of how, and BYU could be better than we're giving them credit for, but I feel like BYU showed how to stop Kansas State. And I feel like if Oklahoma State wants a blueprint of how to come out of Saturday with a win, they need to watch what BYU did and then be prepared to adjust if Kansas State makes adjustments. One more game I'm going to touch on. It's not necessarily a ranked matchup. I think Ohio State versus Michigan State's another game to highlight. Not because I think it'll be a good game, just because it's a rivalry game. I do think Ohio State handles business here, but I feel like this is Ohio State's first true test, and then it's a rivalry game. Not because of how good Michigan State is, but because teams get up for rivalry games. And I know the Ohio State Michigan State game in the past couple of years has not been very competitive. I know the last time I watched this game was probably October of my junior year of college, so 2 years ago. It was a blowout. I remember I was watching it in my great grandparents' house in Ohio, and they're all diehard Ohio State fans, and I believe everyone stopped watching by midway through the second quarter because of how ugly it got. But I will say, I feel like this is Ohio State's first true road test, like just test in general. I'm really curious to see how they perform. I do think they're one of my picks to be one of the top 4 seeds in the college football playoff. And let me think. I guess on the Big Ten note, Illinois, Penn State. In my opinion, I do think Illinois can pull this off. Illinois went into Nebraska. Illinois won at Nebraska last week, right? It wasn't at Illinois. It was at Nebraska, right?
Yes, it was at Nebraska.
I think Nebraska's a little different this year. I mean, obviously that was heartbreaking for Nebraska. That's like they're in the double digits for one-score losses in like the last 5 years. That's not your bad. That's just heartbreaking. That was like their 1-3-9 season where it's like their average loss, like margin of loss was like 3 points. I'm an NC State fan and I felt so bad. That is like torture to watch your team lose. Hey, you'll keep it close with top 10 teams, but no. You're going to lose by 2 points. That's brutal. And that's just brutal to lose by one possession again. But like I said, Illinois is a good team. I think they can do it. I think they can pull it off in the whiteout. One comment Aiden made, Penn State, when Aiden and I talk in terms of ranked teams, sometimes Penn State catches a lot of strays when we talk about it. I think they're warranted strays, but I remember Aiden and I were talking about using certain schools for like a dynasty on College Football 25, and Aiden's like, I mentioned about taking over as offensive coordinator at Penn State, and Aiden goes, "What? You want a school with no history and cannot win ranked matchups?" So you know what? I'm going to go off on a limb here and say Penn State's going to lose at home to Illinois in the whiteout game. I'm sorry, Happy Valley, but it's just not happening. One game I will highlight, just because I'm curious, is Bowling Green Old Dominion. Now, you may be saying, Gareth, what the fuck? But, B-U-T-T-T. Look at Bowling Green's schedule. Loss at Penn State, 34-27. Top 10 team. Loss to Texas A&M on the road. Top 25 team. Both those losses were one possession losses. If Bowling Green keeps playing like this and dominates Old Dominion and then continues on in a MAC conference play, I'm no mathematologist, but in my opinion, if they win out and win the MAC, they could be a sneaky playoff bid for the group of 5 with how they're playing. And I know Aiden and I make the joke that Penn State can't win ranked matchups, but taking Penn State to the wire as a MAC team in Happy Valley is unheard of. Then turning around and going to College Station, which has been voted one of the most formidable atmospheres in college, and keeping it a one-score game, I feel like that speaks volumes. And if Bowling Green can keep that momentum going, they're my pick to win the MAC. And I do love myself some action. I mean, I don't hate any team in the MAC, so I'm happy if any of them win it. But I feel like Bowling Green, and I know people are saying, well, Gareth, NIU in the MAC has beaten a top 10 team. Yes, they have. But I need to see more from both, honestly. But my hot take is Bowling Green blows out Old Dominion and then continues on and wins the MAC and goes to the playoff.
There's no way that happens. The group of 5 teams. So in order for that to happen, you would have to account for James Madison, JMU losing, proven to be a pretty strong team. Texas State has proven to be a pretty strong group of 5 team. We've just been talking about Army and Navy being strong group of 5 teams, and
But
Liberty is also a strong group of 5 team. And you're telling me that Bowling Green is your pick for a college football berth
if they win out, yes.
if they win out? So you're telling me? Hang on. So let's talk about right now. So a 10-2 Bowling Green team has a better shot. So you're telling me a 10-2 team, Bowling Green, is your pick for a playoff berth?
If they win out, yes. But that
If they
also,
win out,
in my mind, that also means Army or Navy didn't win out. Because if Army or Navy went out, I believe that means Navy has like 2 ranked road wins. If Navy wins out, let me look. Same thing with Army. I do think. Let me double check this.
they both play Notre Dame. They both play Notre Dame this year.
Yeah, if either of them are 11-1 or 12-0, that's all bets are off the table. Army plays number 16 Notre Dame. I feel like if it's between them two, Army's probably getting in. I'm saying if everything goes to plan, that does
Everything goes
not
to your
include
plan.
everything goes to my plan. Navy
So
also has
Liberty needs to start losing. JMU needs to start losing. What about Boise State? Pretty strong.
Bowling Green. Okay,
No,
JMU and
Boise
Liberty are
State.
the ones I'm least worried about. The ones that pose the biggest threats to Bowling Green supremacy. And believe me, they're not who I want to make the playoff. I'd love more than anything for a service academy to go in there. Imagine the
Mm-hmm.
triple option in the playoff. The option already gives ranked teams fits. Imagine the added pressure of the playoff. And you're sitting there as an Alabama or a Georgia fan, tied with Army or Navy at the half, 10-10. You'll probably break away in the second half. But imagine Twitter. Imagine the meltdown that SEC fans are in as Army or Navy's tied with like Texas or Alabama with like 32 yards total offense. I can just imagine the bricks that Alabama Twitter would be shitting if that was happening. The world would be, because I remember social media when Alabama was tied with the Citadel, not even an FBS triple option team, the Citadel. Yes, they broke away and won like 52-10 in the second half, but I remember the social media post. It was a rough. Alabama fans had a rough like noon to 3:30 p.m. that day. They broke away.
Yeah.
But no,
Our topic of group of 5 teams has reminded me there is a prime 3-0 group of 5 team that is probably in the worst position I think I've seen Team B in a while. The TLDR of it is 20-something-year-old lost money in Vegas, wants out, and Matthew Solka is now redshirting and stepping out of the rest of the season over an NIL dispute. Basically, he has not been given the money that he wants, and he is stepping out for the rest of the season. And comes very surprising after some very good wins so far for a UNLV team. One against Houston, pretty convincingly, 27-7. They won against Utah Tech, and they got a pretty good win away at Kansas. And this week they're going playing Fresno State, but are in probably I can't imagine what the situation is like right now. But Gareth, what are your thoughts on this scenario?
I see both sides of it. I've talked to my dad about it just as like someone who is a parent of like, I mean, obviously for those who don't know, I swam in college and I realize NIL is very different for that, but I just like asked him his opinion on it. I talked to him about it tonight. I see both sides of it. I see from reports he was only given 3% of what he was promised in terms of NIL money. He was promised 100 grand and has only received 3K. So in that sense, I understand. But in terms of some of the stuff my dad's read, apparently the coach has a very strict policy if he doesn't want players being paid more than another. Like he wants it a very like team effort. So in that I can understand. I've also had some thoughts about this in the sense that so UNLV, for those you don't know, have a scheme or a style of offense nicknamed the go-go offense, which is just tempo, like there's a lot of spread option stuff, quick passing, and very good play call, like they know how to attack a defense. Some things I've seen, and I will say I forget exactly who said this, but I'd also been wondering myself if Sluka was that viable to the team success, wouldn't they have just paid him more? This is what it makes me think that they either believe their team, their scheme, or sorry, they believe that their scheme can make any quarterback succeed, or that they have full faith in their backup. And that's if that's the case. That's if nothing else is the case.
I
That's
don't
if
know.
he
I think it's
wasn't
very
duped.
possible. I think it's very possible that they thought there's no way that you're going to redshirt after the season, even though we haven't paid you. Which say what you want about that, if you whatever your opinions are on that. I certainly have my opinions, but you got to give it to Sluka that he I can't fault him for a fault a man for doing what he thinks is right for him. Now, I definitely do have questions. Like you got to. I think that it's got to just see the person that you bought into, the person that you thought was going to be your leader, step away over not an injury, but over an NIL deal. That's got to definitely be an insane, just yeah. Um, as a my opinions, I definitely do think there's got to be like some forms of regulations of NIL, and I think not for just for the protection of the team, but for the protection of one schools to promise money that they can't deliver, and I definitely don't want to see scenarios like this where players feel like they have to do this. I'm not going to say that this is a selfish move for him. It is definitely interesting, and I'm not gonna lie, like I wasn't like that high or like very aware of Matthew Sluka, but now he's definitely got my attention, and that definitely says something in this that I'm I'm going to be paying attention wherever he goes next year, and for better or for worse. Maybe he's going to get the bag that he feels like he deserves, or maybe I'm just wondering, like, what do you see as a team? Like, do you want some to come in to your team when you know that he might not be as invested as you want him to be? It's a very interesting situation, and I try to see both sides of it.
I know, and I agree. I do too. I see both sides. Like I don't fault him. Like if it is true that he only got 3% of what he was promised to come there, I can understand his situation to sit out. But I can also see how his teammates see, like, he possibly could have gotten that later, or like there's a payment plan that we don't know about. But I could see is like with him entering the transfer portal, do I really want that energy coming in my program? Yes, by all means, pay the man. Like if you pay him and he acts fine, that's perfectly okay. But this is just like a bigger gripe I have with NIL. The whole thing with NIL was supposed to be about brand deals and not donors paying kids to come to your school. Okay, if one of your donors owns a company and they want to pay him to come to the school, okay, pay him through the company. But at least, I'm not sure if this is the case, but what the story made it seem like was the school was paying him to go there. And this could be different. Like you could have had a different understanding than this, Aiden. But in my opinion, how it was explained to me as a Division One athlete at a Division One school when we had our NIL meeting, it was about brand deals. It was never about the school paying you. The basketball players even got the same talk. It was about brand deals. It wasn't about the school paying you. It wasn't about donors paying you. Donors could pay you through their companies if you have an NIL deal with their company, but it was never a direct payment thing. Now, I realize college football has always kind of had different rules, as we've seen over the years. I mean, their COVID protocol, they could kind of return to play whenever. And this could just be like, they're the big money sport. They can do what they want. But what do you think of it in terms of that light? How it's like, at least how as an athlete, how NIL was explained to me. And this wasn't just a non-revenue sport NIL meeting. This was the basketball players were present. The hockey team was present. Yes, for those of you who don't know, in the Northeast, hockey is just as big as college football is. College hockey is just as big as college football regionally, not in terms of the U.S., regionally. But
Yeah,
the hockey
yeah,
players got that same spiel. The soccer players did. It wasn't just like this one team.
absolutely. I mean, to my understanding, that was always the intention of the rule, and that's what I originally bought it into behind. Just the idea that these players were able to make money off their name, image, and likeness. Um, I'm just I'm at a loss of words because the landscape of college football has been changing for a while, and I don't want to just point at NIL and say that's the root cause of all this change, because the media market has been uh, uprooting college football, as seen with all this conference realignment, and that's been taking a lot. That's been changing football uh, in ways that we could not even fathom 5 years ago. But I there's definitely there needs to be a call for some form of regulation to not only to protect all parties involved. I want I want to make sure that college players are getting paid what they are promised. I also want to make sure that schools aren't at a disadvantage. I don't want these bigger schools who have bigger purses to completely buy out all the players. I want players to have an opportunity increase their brand image at any school they go to and use that as a platform to make money off of advertisement after like brand deals and stuff like that. Uh, but other than that, I feel very out of my depth. The business and the personal lives of people that I really don't know. All I know is just the mentality of somebody in that age, because I am that age. And I can definitely see how might be incentivized to leave, especially if I believe this is his last year of eligibility, and he wants to save it because he spent 4 years at Holy Cross, balled out, and he wanted to basically catch it, get his bag uh, in his last year of college. And the school that he went to that promised him a bag did not deliver. I feel like he's well within his rights to do it, whether it's the best move optics wise, or even like I'm thinking about going into the league to sign a draft or sign an undrafted player that has this type of reputation. I don't know, but contract holding out on contracts is something that's common in the NFL. So I feel like I'm just completely at a loss. So like I feel like I can't fully speak on the situation.
I agree too, because I feel like we mentioned earlier, we also just don't know. Like, we don't know the full extent of the story. I mean, obviously, we've heard his side and we've kind of heard the school side, but like, and this is something that's recently come out. Like, we'll probably touch on this more as this develops. I know their running back, Michael Allen, has also entered the transfer portal, but he's come out and said it's for different reasons. He said it's more of a playing time thing, which I can respect. Like, both sides have come out on that issue and said that it was a playing time thing, and they both agree that that was what was best. So on that one, like, I feel like we can draw pretty clear conclusions. But in terms of the Matthew Sluka thing, I feel like this isn't the end of the story. Like, we will be hearing about this for at least the coming weeks, if not till the end of the season. Couple more, at the very least, couple more weeks. Do I think it's going to last till the end of the season? No, but I do think there's going to be some information coming out about that in the coming weeks. Anything else you want to add, Aiden? Anything else you want to touch on this episode, or is that you think that's a wrap? I mean, we will have
I think that's a wrap. I think.
Go for it. Yeah.
I think that's a wrap. A very good episode. Able to highlight a bunch of different issues across the world of football and sports at large. I feel satisfied signing off now.
Okay, sounds good. But there may be a possibility of us having too many episodes coming out along with this, like emergency press conference style ones. If we feel up to it, I know I've got some things I'd like to go more in depth about NC State season that we just can't go into depth, that we just can't on our general episodes. We just don't have the time to go into. I know Aiden probably has some more stuff he'd like to go into depth on Carolina.
I will save my emergency press conference in the event that UNC loses to Duke, because I feel like that would be the sign of a true emergency. So that's all I'm saying right now. I don't press conference just yet, but we're on a code like yellow right now. We're not at red right now. We're at yellow.
Not quite at, what is it? What's the worst level of DEFCON? Is it DEFCON 1? That's the worst level?
DEFCON 1.
So you say you're at like DEFCON 3, DEFCON 2 right now. Not full panic,
yes.
But that's where I feel like that's where I am with Steve.
Yes.
But thank you guys for listening in. As always, this is Tobacco Road and Abroad episode, The Red Rifle / At Least We're Not Nashville / Diddy Rant. Thank you guys for listening in. Thank you for listening on YouTube, Spotify, anywhere. Apple Podcasts, we're going to try and get that up and going. Make sure you follow the Instagram at Tobacco Road and Abroad. We possibly may be making a TikTok as well where we'll post the reels. But for now, thank you guys for listening in, and we will see you next week.